Everybody. My name is Marlon Pragnell, and I want to welcome you today to the program on World Diabetes Day. It's a huge honor and a privilege to be able to talk to you today. You know, what's really shocking is the amount of people that have diabetes, almost 1 in 10. Also, what's shocking is how many people don't know they even have diabetes. We see that here in this country, in the USA, and across the world. And it's really critically important that we address this. One challenge that we see is access. The cost of insulin, for example. Another is the access to medical care, access to healthy living environments. So many issues around these areas that we need to address. And World Diabetes Day is the perfect day to reflect on this and to make sure that we move forward on these critical issues.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you. And of course, working in Miami part-time, I have a very high regard for the ADA and its activities. The IDF was founded, International Diabetes Federation, was founded back in 1950. So we're quite old. And now we have about 230, more than 230 member associations across 170 different countries and territories in all the major continents. So our main task is to represent the interests of people living with diabetes, but also promoting awareness of diabetes, care, and of course, prevention. And we are very active in advocacy. But I think one of the major problems we face across the world is that people do not take diabetes seriously. They think it's a touch of sugar. You know, my grandmother had it. She was 90. I think if we take diabetes seriously as an eminently preventable disease, with screening of high-risk groups, we can prevent many cases going from pre-diabetes into diabetes. But we can also do secondary prevention, that is, people who have diabetes, if we look after them well, we can prevent them getting the late complications in many ways. And it's the late complications that lead to the terrible problems with kidney disease, heart disease, eye disease, loss of feeling in the feet, vascular disease, amputations, and so on, that everybody knows about. But those are so preventable if we take diabetes seriously, and we need to really help our governments, our health authorities, to take diabetes as a serious but eminently preventable and treatable condition if we catch it early. And one of our main tasks is to raise awareness across the world through our member associations of diabetes as a serious but treatable condition.
Could you speak to some of the global stats and then maybe emphasize a little bit about the work that and how IDF is helping to minimize those impacts? Sure.
Well, one of the global authorities on the prevalence of diabetes is our IDF Diabetes Atlas. That's one of our major tasks. Is every other year, it may change to every 3 years, but we have a committee of experts in epidemiology and diabetes prevalence who really amass a huge amount of data through our member associations, through epidemiologists across the world. And this is chaired by Ed Boyko in Seattle and Diana Magliano in Melbourne, Australia. And they have a group of real experts. And where possible, we use population-based data. Of course, that's not always available, but registers are now available in many countries. And through our member associations, we can put the committee in touch with people in each country who will guide them to the most reliable data. The very worrying thing is that the Atlas, which is published on World Diabetes Day, is showing that there are now more than 537 million people with diabetes across the world. This is an increase of 16% in the last 2 years. And of course, this is a huge impact on global healthcare. 1 in 10 adults across the world has diabetes, 1 in 10. The highest countries in the world are China and India, But Pakistan has now overtaken the United States as a smaller country, but now that's number 3 in the world, with 26 to 27% of adults having diabetes. These are horrific statistics. The United States is number 4, but of course it's a big country. More than 6.5 million people probably die each year because of diabetes and its complications. And the costs are phenomenal. So the Atlas really raises the awareness of diabetes as a global problem and helps us target areas that are in specific need. On World Diabetes Day, I'll be giving a lecture virtually in the Middle East. The Middle East is one of the highest prevalence areas in the world, with some countries approaching nearly 1 in 3 with diabetes. So these are very serious figures, and we really need to work to raise awareness so we can do something about screening high-risk group, targeting prevention. We can even reverse diabetes. Studies from the UK, the direct studies suggesting that a very strict diet early on, you can reverse diabetes, go back to normal glucose tolerance. There's so much we can do, but again, it comes to picking this up early.
Thank you. Could you speak to a little bit more about like how World Diabetes Day started and it evolved?
Yeah, World Diabetes Day was actually started 30 years ago in 1991 in combination with the WHO and IDF, really to raise the profile of diabetes across the world and to focus. And many years we've focused not on World Diabetes Day, but a year, having a theme for that year. My area of specific interest is reducing lower limb problems, reducing amputations and so on. In 2005, for example, we focused the whole year on the problem of amputations, raising awareness of how these can be prevented by simple screening. So each year we have a theme. Last year was the role of the diabetes specialist nurse. And I know in my country, in the United States, the nurse and the nurse educator are absolutely pivotal members of the diabetes team. But in some countries, the nurse is not playing such a prominent role. And we really wanted to raise the role. So we had a lot of activities across our member associations, across all the continents of the world, raising the profile of the diabetes specialist nurse. And so this year we're talking about, obviously, it's a celebration. It's 100 years since the discovery of insulin. World Diabetes Day is on the birth date of Frederick Banting, one of the discoverers in Toronto, November 14th. So this year we're focusing, of course, remembering that this is a momentous celebration. The discovery of insulin, I think last century was probably the most important discovery in medicine. It saved thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives. It's a life-saving medication, but there are still people dying in countries across our world who cannot access insulin. This is almost a crime 100 years after the discovery of insulin. So we're really trying to raise the importance of people with diabetes, wherever they are, whatever they do, to have access to the medications they need, not only insulin, but people with type 2 diabetes, the medications they need. There are many oral medications, there are non-insulin injectables. So we really want access to care across the world. So we're focusing on a celebration, but also improving access to diabetes care. And on World Diabetes Day, November the 14th, many of our member associations have specific events, really raising the profile of diabetes, going to schools, colleges, and so on. Perhaps not this year, it's on a Sunday. But this is the kind of activity. We have walks and runs to raise money for research. And, you know, this is our badge, the blue circle. And many prominent countries across the world, to remind us of diabetes, are lit up in blue on World Diabetes Day, and including major well-known monuments in the United States. New York and Washington have been lit up. A few years ago, 10 years ago or so, I was lecturing in Kathmandu in Nepal, and some of the temples were lit up in blue to remind people of diabetes is a condition that we can do much about, but left untreated, it can lead to very serious consequences and increased mortality. So we're having programs across the world about insulin, about access to insulin, going to schools, colleges, helping children with diabetes. And we have a lot of young people's programs. So this is a global activity, but it shouldn't just be on one day. We need access to diabetes care across the world every day.
Thank you. Could you maybe give into some examples of like the challenge of the access, maybe with some stories of you from some countries around the world? And
Yeah, during crises, for example, in Haiti after the earthquake, more recently in Middle East countries where access has been difficult, in Libya, in Afghanistan, in Lebanon. Lebanon had a terrible, huge explosion in Beirut, and this disrupted access to care. And in Palestine, there's been a problem too. So we work together with local authorities and Direct Relief, which is a humanitarian organization based out of the United States, really trying to help. And people will come to us and we will gather the necessary forces together to try and help the situation. So that's helping in times of disaster, in insulin delivery or oral agents, whatever's needed. And we've worked in countries across the world, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where there are frequently problems, by having our member associations target that problem and trying to help solve it with our help, and we can help access the necessary authorities across the world. So we're very active when there are problems, but we should be active really to prevent problems. And that's really what we should be focusing on.
is there a takeaway action that you could suggest to individuals of how they kind of make a difference? There's the awareness and there's the access, but
I think the major thing here is for people to be aware what is diabetes, what it can do. If it's in my family, I might be at risk. If I'm sedentary or markedly overweight, I could be at risk. If I've had gestational diabetes, I could be at risk. All these are risk factors, and we need to raise awareness. If you look at our friends and colleagues in heart disease and cancer, why does someone take a statin? They don't feel any better, but they're frightened of heart disease. Why does someone go and have a prostate check or a mammogram? They're frightened of cancer. But then it comes to diabetes, people don't take it seriously. And I think if we can raise through education that diabetes is something that can be serious if left undiagnosed, it can be prevented if you screen for people at high risk early. These are the key messages. And I think this is what we have to get across, not only on World Diabetes Day, but all around the year. And that is raising diabetes as a serious but eminently preventable and treatable condition that can lead to deadly consequences if left untreated. And this drives healthcare costs. And I think politicians, of course, have a short-term outlook because they're looking at re-election. But we really need a little bit of short-term expenditure for long-term savings. And we know, for example, controlling diabetes well in its early stages will lead to a lot of savings and a much better quality of life if you don't get the late complications. Sadly, that's my area of expertise, and people know we can still do something, even if they've got nerve damage and they've had a foot ulcer. Tertiary or quaternary prevention is preventing them getting another one. So there's so much we can do all the way along, but let's take diabetes seriously. That's the most important message. And the message to government is that diabetes takes a huge amount of healthcare expenditure. In some developing countries, it can be as high as 30% of the whole budget. But this can be reduced. And more importantly, the morbidity from having diabetes can be reduced by early action. So it's a call for early action. That's the most important message.
I got diabetes overnight, and that's no exaggeration. I needed a liver transplant in 2008. I was told that developing diabetes might be one of the side effects. I woke up from my surgery to a life dependent on insulin. Today, insulin is the key to living a normal life for me. It's a good life. After a long career in law, I'm enjoying retirement in Florida with my wife, Marge. Marge is really good at finding things. I have to take so many medicines. Since I no longer have an income, we're having trouble paying for everything. Marge suggested maybe we could get some help. So we looked into what the manufacturer of my insulin had to offer. And that's how we found out about the prescription assistance program offered by the manufacturer of my insulin. This allows me to get my medication at no cost. It was very easy. We called, spoke to some really helpful people. They sent us the forms online. I filled out my part, and my doctor filled out hers. It took me a while to find a treatment plan that works for me. So I was thrilled to be able to continue with this insulin thanks to this program. To anyone struggling to afford insulin, I would encourage them to see if they qualify. It made all the difference for me.
The truth is, when you live with a progressive disease like diabetes, sometimes you might find yourself asking, do I buy medicine or do I pay my rent? That's not something that should happen. With the Sanofi copay program, I don't have to make those choices. I don't worry about how to balance my medication expenses along with all my other bills. It's been a big help to me.
Every 19 seconds, about the length of this video, a loved one will hear the 3 words that will change their lives forever. You have diabetes. The time for a cure is now. Help us save lives and put an end to diabetes. Visit diabetes.org/donate now.
Wait until the city finds out about this type 1 protector.
My name is Betsy Rodriguez. I'm a pancreas mom for 31 years now. My daughter was diagnosed when she was 8 years old. And it has been a journey that has opened doors to me to be the voice of those who might not have a voice and are living with diabetes and are facing challenges. So I have had the opportunity to work here in the United States with many populations, especially ethnic minority populations, and in Latin America, working in collaboration with International Diabetes Federation, Central and South America region. I have witnessed the health inequities of people living with diabetes in Latin America. There has been a lot of improvement to celebrate. For example, if you look to Argentina, Argentina has a law that actually helps people get the supplies and the medications they need to live with diabetes. So those are good news, right? But then when you compare with other low socioeconomic countries, you will see the discrepancies and the differences in access to diabetes related supplies as well as medications. So in those populations is that we're really facing a lot of problems and issues that are impacting the quality of care and the well-being of people living with diabetes. Take a moment to think right now in indigenous populations. Hi, my name is Betsy Rodriguez. By training, I'm a nurse and a certified diabetes educator. But I think that the most important thing that I want to share with you is that I am a pancreas mom. And what does that really mean? That means that my only daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 8 years old. It has passed 31 years now. Actually, next week will be her diabetes anniversary. They're 31. And that has been a long journey with ups and downs. But here we are doing our best. She is blessed. She has access to diabetes related technology. She has access to insulin. She has access to diabetes education. She has access to emotional support, and she has me, who have the knowledge, the expertise, and the relationships. But would you imagine how many kids, how many people are out there that doesn't have all of those things? Take a moment and think, for example, in Latin America, indigenous populations, rural communities, having nothing. When I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to be in some places in Latin America and in Mexico, and I was able to witness how those kids, for example, were having delays in their growth because of the lack of access to insulin. no education at all. As of last night, I got a video from a young man from Ecuador who was diagnosed 21 years ago. He had no access to anything. He was struggling to barely have insulin until he developed end-stage renal disease. In that moment, he was able to know a lady who have an association for people with diabetes in Ecuador. And she was the one who helped him get access to the medication and to dialysis. When this kid, when this man reached her, it was way too late. He already had the complications related with diabetes. So he was able to get for 1 or 2 years, I will say, dialysis. But as of a couple of months ago, he finally passed away. He died. So we're collecting those stories just to showcase why access to quality of life, why access or to diabetes care is so important. Because if it's not now, when? And actually, that's the International Diabetes Federation campaign for this year. Access to care, if it's not now, then when? Acceso al cuidado de la diabetes, porque si no es ahora, ¿cuándo? We must amplify our voices to let the people know that there are many people out there that have no access to insulin or limited access to insulin, diabetes supply, and forget about diabetes related technology, despite the fact that the sign is telling us how helpful this diabetes related technology could be, especially for the type 1 community. So I feel the pain of those mothers that are living in countries that the government status, for example, is now allowing their kids to get the quality care they need. Think, for example, in Venezuela, the political status right now there. Think in Cuba. Think in many other Latin and Caribbean countries, Haiti, for example, Dominican Republic, Bolivia, Guatemala, El Salvador. Those are communities where people living with diabetes are facing all kinds of challenges. Here in the United States, we're talking about social determinant of health. Well, I invite you to think about Latin America and the social determinant of health that people with diabetes are facing right now. So I will ask you all to help us amplify the voice to government, to the pharmaceutical industry, to the policymakers, to anyone who has something to say in the well-care and the quality of life of those who, like me and my daughter, are living with diabetes 24/7, 365 days a year, 24/7, 365 días del año, viviendo con una condición crónica que donde muchas veces el limitado acceso a cuidado de calidad impacta la calidad de vida de esas personas. Así que debemos amplificar nuestras voces, llevar este mensaje de la Federación Internacional de Diabetes. Si no es ahora, ¿cuándo? If it's not now, then when? Lastly, to conclude my conversation with you all today, I would like to invite you to visit the IDF website, and in there look for the Central and South America region, when you can find education resources in Spanish and all the materials related with this campaign in Spanish as well. And if you're living in the United States, then you may want to visit www.cdc.gov/diabetes. And in there, you also will be able to find education resources and information available in English and in Spanish. And lastly, I want to say that we all together are very powerful. In the United States, we have 1 out of 3 people with pre-diabetes, and half of them might not know that they have it. So that means that we're going to be having more people having diabetes in this country and then having limited access to care. So those are who are not actually having the condition. So we have to look for both areas. Those who are at risk or living with prediabetes and those who are living with diabetes. Those who are at risk, we have to work because the science already says that type 2 diabetes can be prevented or delayed. So there's something people can do. For example, we have doihaveprediabetes.org, when people can take the risk test to know their situations because the results can be changed. Type 2 diabetes can be prevented. And then for those who have already diabetes diagnosed, we have to work to prevent the complications related with diabetes. And only that can be done if people have effective management. And to be effective managed, access to insulin, access to medications, access to technology, access to monitoring devices and supplies, access to education, access to proper nutrition, access to safe place for physical activity, access to emotional support. All of those are needed because if it's not now, when? Porque si no es ahora, ¿cuándo? Gracias.
Y demostrarle que para mí la diabetes no ha sido un impedimento para mí, o sea, no ha habido un problema, no ha sido un problema para que yo pueda llegar hasta donde estoy. Yo más bien he llegado, y eso yo he visto que he llegado mucho más lejos que otras personas que no tienen otra complicación. Entonces los diabéticos sí podemos, nosotros podemos hacer incluso más.
Bueno, empezó cuando Brandon tenía 4 años. Luego al año ya se puso mal, empezó a enflaquecer, a no comer, a vomitar. Así que lo llevé al hospital Albina Patiño de niños. Lamentablemente esas veces no había glucómetros en el hospital. Tenían que pincharle con lancetas los dedos. Y era una doctora, no sé si era endocrinóloga, creo que aquella vez no había diabetes en esos tiempos. Así que parece que la doctora tenía miedo de utilizar la insulina. Era muy poco lo que estaba utilizando. Y de repente un día me dice la doctora, búsquele a la doctora Duarte. Y fui a buscarla en la caja petrolera. La encontré y le dije, mi hijo se me muere. Porque ya no caminaba, Brando. Ya no caminaba, estaba ahí botado, no comía, no hacía nada. Le cargábamos a los 6 años en brazos. No se valía de sí mismo. Teníamos que hacerle jugar y todo era cargar. Bendiga a la doctora Duarte esa vez. Ella fue la que me animó y me dijo, señora, va a estar bien. Y le vi siempre, Viviana, siempre con esa sonrisa, decía yo tengo diabetes, señora. Y somos sanos, no nos falta nada, solo somos dulces. Me acuerdo como le agradezco harta, Vivi.
Y entramos al baño y veo jeringa. Entonces dije, no, así, él se droga, dije. Y yo soy de las personas que habla así de frente. Dije, Brandon, ¿te drogas? Y él me dice, no. Entonces fue que ahí él me relató que es una persona portadora de la enfermedad de diabetes. Y desde esa vez me explicó de la insulina, dónde se inyecta, y justamente vi las partes que se inyectan, y en las partes que se inyecta había sido lo que es en el estómago, en el brazo, y una vez también yo me atreví a inyectarle en la nalga. Entonces dije, como hay más grasa ahí, entonces le daremos ahí, y él dijo, no. Y en él practiqué lo que es también inyectarle la insulina, y así.
Es como nosotros, no tiene ninguna restricción él, solamente que a veces solamente se inyecta, solamente sería eso lo único que hace de diferente de nosotros, pero en sí es una buena persona que él trata de enseñarnos también lo que él sabe y su diabetes nunca fue impedimento para nada, ni para el estudio, ni para las actividades físicas, para nada. Todo como nosotros lo hace.
Entonces, la primera vez a mí que un doctor supongo que vino y me hizo la glicemia, pero me hizo cortándome con rilet. O sea, no había todavía esas lancetas que eran para pinchar, sino era el rilet directo que cortaban el dedo. Entonces, eso era muy traumático para mí, para tener esa edad de 5 años, entonces me dolía. Y lo hacía cada día. Y de ahí conocí al grupo, al Centro Vivir de Diabetes, que vino a mí al programa, allá al hospital, el programa, y ellos me abrieron la puerta, me dijeron que estaban desinformando, que estoy muy agradecido porque realmente no, muchos de nosotros, de los que vivimos acá en Cochabamba, somos varios, somos creo más de 60 personas que estamos acá, y que no supiéramos cómo vivir y cómo sobrellevar esa diabetes si no fuera gracias a ustedes y al grupo y a los grandes profesionales que tiene el grupo Vivir con Diabetes, que nos han enseñado a cómo prevenir, a controlarnos, a diagnosticarnos, qué cosas hacer y no hacer, qué carbohidratos comer y qué no. Entonces, muy agradecido con todo eso.
Greetings, friends, family, alumni. It is my hope to find you well. Tinotenda Zigiti here present, the ambassador for Zimbabwe Diabetes Association and the final year student with Bindra University of Science Education. And today I'll speak briefly about Zimbabwe Diabetes Association and the mission, stating the number of people living with diabetes in Zimbabwe and the state of diabetes and in Zimbabwe and Africa as a whole, the managing and type 2 diabetes, what it is like, the cost and access to insulin, the resources that are available to the people that are living with diabetes, what it is like to live with diabetes. In my case, I'll tell my story at the end, and I hope that you'll be able to listen carefully and learn something new from our context. So the Zimbabwe Diabetes Association is a private voluntary organization, and we represent the interests of a growing number of people with diabetes and those at risk and their family and their healthcare givers, for example, the nurses and the caregivers from the home settings. We are affiliated with the International Diabetes Federation, that is the IDF. So we are a part of the IDF Africa region, among other member states, since 1991, and locally we work with the Ministry of Healthcare and Childcare of Zimbabwe. The association has partnerships with the Life for a Child under the IDF that enables Zimbabwe Diabetes Association to provide all the children under the age of 25 years with free diabetes drugs, syringes, glucometers, test strips, and other accessories in Zimbabwe. And recently, with the help of the Direct Relief, it has extended an invitation to Zimbabwe Diabetes Federation, to Zimbabwe Diabetes Association to participate in a new exciting offer for type 2 diabetes medications and blood pressure diabetes medications. Now, I'll share briefly about our mission and what are our main focuses. So our mission for Zimbabwe Diabetes Association is to improve the spiritual or the physical and socio-economic welfare of people with diabetes in Zimbabwe and the sub-Saharan Africa. And our main focuses are to support and strengthen the Zimbabwe Diabetes Association, provincial, district, and rural diabetes healthcare, education, class centers, to improve the health outcomes of people with diabetes and prevent people with diabetes from developing complications, to champion a country free from discrimination and stigma to people living with diabetes. Now a look at the state of diabetes in Zimbabwe. The prevalence of diabetes in Zimbabwe has increased significantly over the past 3 decades, posing serious challenges to the provision of care and prevention of type 2 diabetes. Zimbabwe Diabetes Association estimates that about 1.4 million Zimbabweans or adults, that is about 10% of the people, have diabetes as of 2020. And however, many areas are never diagnosed, or many cases, people are never diagnosed, and at times people are diagnosed at post-mortem. That is, it is impossible to tell a true number of people that are living with diabetes. Now a look at the state of diabetes in Africa. 19 million adults from 20 to 79 years were living with diabetes in the IDF Africa region as of 2019. This figure is estimated to increase to 47 million by 2045. About 45 million adults from 20 to 79 years in IDF Africa region had impaired glucose tolerance, which placed them at a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. These figures are being estimated to reach 110 million by 2045 in Africa. The IDF Africa has the highest percentage of undiagnosed people of all the IDF regions. About 60% of adults are living with diabetes and they do not know that they have it. And 1 in 9 live births are affected by hyperglycemia in pregnancy. Moving on to managing type 1 and type 2 in Africa. People living with diabetes in Zimbabwe are living a difficult life, if not leading a compromised lifestyle. Because it's either you get the blood glucose test at a pharmacy or during your doctor's visit in the hospital. Due to the absurd costs of diabetes supplies that you need to have each and every day, there's no access to ketone meters and the glycogen for treating severe hypoglycemia at the disposal of everyone who needs to use it. That is, this serves to say that there is always the issue of opportunity cost in the relation to medication, especially insulin and the diabetes supplies. So people, they have to prioritize to have insulin than to have the diabetes supplies to manage or to help them to control their blood sugars each and every day as they would have wanted to attain good quality life. So people in Africa are making critical choices, whether insulin or diabetes supplies. In this case, people with diabetes are foregoing the latter. Now I'll look at the costs or access. So insulin prices are varied from the private to the public, and the human insulin to the analog insulin, which is the modern day insulin. So analog insulin is thrice the price of the human insulin that are usually supplied in insulin pens that you can only use for a week, but the price is really unmatched. So people with diabetes would prefer human or the premixed vials, even against the professional advice, hence their quality of life is very poor. So there's an inverse relationship between the supply and access to insulin. That is to say, the supply of insulin has increased over the years in Zimbabwe. However, access to insulin has not been fully addressed to meet the needs of everyone who needs it. So insulin is readily available in the urban areas, whereas in the less remote areas, people are always found wanting. Thus, access has not been fully addressed across the nation. Therefore, patients resort from the modern insulin to the old insulin regimens due to the exorbitant cost of insulin. Now allow me to look at the resources that people in Zimbabwe or people in Africa have to manage their diabetes. So diabetes education still requires thorough redress to help the community to make informed decisions. We are from a community where more than 90% have never heard of the modern day diabetes technology, especially the CGM, the continuous glucose monitoring machines, a community where less than 10% of people are living with diabetes have an experience of an insulin pump. That is, they would have at least maybe used an insulin pump when they were in the hospital, in the emergency rooms, or in the intensive care. A nation where people do not make use of the medical ID bracelets or necklaces in cases of emergency. A community without access to glycogen injections and ketone test kits readily available for use unless if you're in a hospital. Moreover, we are a community where more than 50% have never heard about the HbA1c test done. They've never had an HbA1c test done on them for about 2 years, and some do not have knowledge about what HbA1c is. And we cannot really talk about the time in range, which the developed countries are now talking about right now. And it should be noted that most of the African nations, if not all, do get all the diabetes medication and all the necessary supplies from donations and importation. So we rely 100% from the importation, and nothing is manufactured within our own countries or within our nation in Africa. Moving on to what it is like to live with diabetes. For example, I'm now sharing my story. So the existence of my story in this world is pretty unlikely. I went through every difficulty there was to experience, and it was not comfortable. By this, I'm referring to the diabetes symptoms that I felt in 2010. Soon after my diagnosis, I was experiencing severe hypos at almost every night, and for that, I have been served by sugar or glucose powder. However, due to lack of education, my family had to get used to it, to say this is just the new normal. I think we would just have to get used to it. We have to wake him up in the morning, not knowing that I wouldn't have had to sleep whilst I was hungry, feeling hypo signs, due to the fact that I didn't have glucometers to test my blood sugar to give me a true view of what my blood sugars were like and what sort of help I needed then. So I made use of the sweeteners, and at times I would use the sugar for coffee and tea, and my food portions were not as per the recommendations from the doctors, for I only had to rely only on the doctor's visits to get the information I needed, not that I had any access to any association to get the education, like the free education, so that I'll be guided and know what I had to do when. So as I was just living my own world, I was living in my own world with diabetes. So whenever I felt hungry, I would take heavy food, whether I had hypo or hyper. Nobody had knowledge about it. So I would just take food when I feel hungry. I would feel I really needed to eat. And so in almost about every 10 hours, I was just getting to eat something, even if I didn't know my blood sugar, readings, because I didn't have the machines then. So diabetes management to me was just eating after every 2 hours, administering insulin regardless of my blood glucose readings, which at times might have required me to take correctional doses. So monitoring of my blood glucose levels was not a priority then, due to the exorbitant cost of test strips, and so the priority to me and my family was insulin and syringes, which was 100% out of pocket. So I never took my meds to school, so the only people that had knowledge about my diabetes, there were very, very few, and hence the discrimination was never a thing in my life. And basically, those who had the privilege to know that I had diabetes, they paid little attention, or not even, because it was on what they could have done in cases of emergency. Nobody told them anything. They just knew that I was diabetes. I took medication when I'm home. So lastly, I'll look at the opportunities that diabetes has presented in my life. So living with diabetes has been like a window of opportunity for me. And with me being involved with the most prestigious organizations around the world, has prepared or equipped me to empower my community in the best way I know how. So I realized I could start engaging my community through media campaigns, radio, television interviews, newspaper articles, and personal blogs to help encourage, educate, and thereby raising awareness as a patient advocate. So since 2019, I've attended conferences the most extraordinary conferences, so to say. The ESPAD, the ATTD, sponsored by the GDOC through their scholarship that have been awarded more than, I would say three times so far. So, and I've networked with the great advocates through their unwavering support. I've had the opportunity to get access. So many people in Zimbabwe have gotten access to the diabetes supply, that is the glucometers and test strips that friends would have been donating to me, that I've just been able to give to some of the people that were close to me, or even people that reached to me because of my network. So I've managed to conduct diabetes screening outreaches to test people so that I could tell if they had diabetes, and we could advise them to say, go to the doctor. You should now make this your lifestyle because it is a new normal to you. So, and yes, without hesitation, I will remain steadfast knowing that diabetes is not an obstacle, but rather a substance to fully take advantage and help make the world a better place with the acquired knowledge that has been bestowed upon me. And lastly, I would like to give a shout out, a huge thanks to Zimbabwe Diabetes Association, to GDOC, to ESPAD, T1 International, Africa Diabetes Alliance for allowing me and advocating with me, partnering with me, helping me to be the better person that I am, that this world needs. So lastly, I would say, let's get involved, let's get engaged, let's come up together and demand the change that we need. But best of all, never forget that insulin for all should become a reality and unite for diabetes. And with all being said, I rest my case, and I hope that you found this educational. Thank you so much for listening.
As India emerges from the pandemic, it is necessary to bring the focus back on managing the chronic lifestyle conditions like diabetes. India has the dubious distinction of rapidly progressing towards being the diabetes capital of the world. Indians are genetically more prone to developing diabetes, and the risks increases due to our carbohydrate-rich diet. The more worrying aspect of diabetes in India is that an increasingly higher number of younger people are now being diagnosed with diabetes. It is important that people are made more aware regarding the challenges posed by diabetes so that they are better prepared to defeat diabetes.
That diabetes can affect everything from the head to the foot, including the head and the feet. And therefore, there is no organ which is spared by diabetes.
So it is always prudent to know that do you have diabetes, and that was the whole objective of a recently concluded Defeat Diabetes program that we undertook from the RSSDI.
The lifestyle modification is the first therapy that you start with in patients of diabetes.
Any complication of diabetes, whether it's a retinopathy or as we are talking of other complications like neuropathy, the progression can be halted by a tighter glycemic control.
Some neuropathies, which occurs in the eyes, we call it diplopia, is totally reversible. One neuropathy occurs in the thigh muscle, called femoral neuropathy, is totally reversible.
The diabetes is a state in which the body's immune system doesn't work properly. So it's a kind of an acquired immune deficiency kind of a state.
If BMI is between 32.5 to 37.5, they are the ideal candidate for going for bariatric surgery,
which could sense the glucose and appropriately adjust the insulin dosages. That's what the future is.
Weight loss is known to reduce insulin resistance, and because of that, the person can become more insulin sensitive and can go back towards normal and not proceed towards type 2 diabetes.
Practically every sixth individual, every sixth woman appearing to or attending a antenatal clinic is likely to have a hyperglycemia or gestational diabetes.
Adjust the diet according to the weight loss that you really want, and then you can plan for both aerobic and strengthening exercises.
Hello everybody, greetings from India. This is Dr. S.R. Arvind, the past president of RSSDI and currently the president of Diabetes India. Awareness has been a big challenge in India because we have 73 million people with known diabetes and 44 million who do not know that they have diabetes. So what we decided to do during this World Diabetes Day was all the key opinion leaders came together and with the help of RSSDI put forth a program called the Awareness and Beat Diabetes program, which was telecast live actually on the national television, and it ran for several days. Several myths were busted and we had hundreds of questions that was actually answered by the key opinion leaders. Please have a look at some of the clippings that we have done for the World Diabetes Day from India, and this is the presentation of RSSDA. Thank you so very much.
questions. And we'll give you multiple options. And then you shout out the answers. Exactly. Your answers decide what happens in the next scene. Your success decides how diabetes will affect Charlie's life. Let's start them off in Mom and Dad's shoes. Their son has just been diagnosed with diabetes.
Insulin helps the body use food for energy.
Helps the body.
Before Charlie started taking insulin, his body was not able to use food for energy.
That's why you've been losing weight, Charlie. And feeling so weak.
That's Charlie.
That's why.
Just to be perfectly clear, what exactly is type 1 diabetes? Well, much of the food you eat becomes a type of sugar called glucose. Charlie's pancreas cannot make insulin, so the glucose stays in his blood.
So blood sugar and glucose
sugar.
Insulin lowers blood sugar.
So diabetes is basically one big balancing act.
Precisely. Every time Charlie eats carbohydrates, he'll have to take insulin.
We'll teach you how to balance it properly, because too much insulin can cause low blood sugar.
Any blood sugar less than 4
does Charlie use food for energy? Insulin stops Charlie from peeing.
Insulin causes high blood sugar. Ow! That's right. Insulin helps Charlie use food for energy. Which of Charlie's blood sugars are too low and need to be treated with fast-acting sugar? 12.0, 3.8,
9.9, 4.1,
12.0, 3.8,
9.9, 4.1,
12.0, 9.8, 3.8,
9.9, 4.1.
That's right. When his blood sugar's lower than 4.0, it needs to be treated with fast-acting sugar. 3.8 is lower than 4.0.
It's too low.
You got 3 out of 3 questions right.
So I have those glucose tabs in my briefcase. It's a great way to proactively monetize all of our and it would really set us up for an upswing in the third quarter. Let's see. What does that market research say about our clientele? Can't conceive of weakness. Well, terrorist surveys. Okay then. Alright. How does our product rank? Yes, exclusively. Yes, our professional series.
A professional series is great. Our classic series is struggle.
Losing concentration again. I should really check my sugars discreetly behind my briefcase.
Client-based paradigm is much more cost-effective than the old client-centered approach.
Sounds good to me.
What's your department?
What the hell did she just say? Something about client-focused. Concentrate, damn it. Well, can't let them think I'm weak. Can't let them see my weakness.
Damn it, Charlie! Quit texting and chime in here!
Great. Now she thinks I'm slacking off. Still better than being some diabetic pity case. Our biggest weakness is that we're not backward compatible. 4.1. Thank God. If we're able to reconnect with what initially turned our client onto our product, we'll stay relevant and turn customer satisfaction into profit. I really hope my sugars are on their way up. Keep eating those glucose tabs.
Brenda just told us how the classic series isn't really serving customer needs.
Get Brenda to keep talking. Give me enough time to regain my senses. I'm under the impression that they're happy. Brenda, do you have anything to back that up?
Satisfaction,
And obviously, the classic series is doing its job. We just need to remind the client that the classic series can also serve their other needs.
I think you really ought to something. That's exactly the kind of proactive integration we need.
It'll look great on the quarterly report.
I think you really ought to
Exactly.
Exactly the kind of proactive integration we need.
I think you really ought to something.
Exactly the kind of integration we need.
Great on the report.
Exactly the integration we need. Really ought to
It'll look great on the report.
Exactly the
It'll look
integration.
great on the report.
Exactly,
It'll look
exactly
great
the integration
on
we
the
need.
report. It'll
not be naive. A diabetic won't stay healthy unless they can deal with real life scenarios. How well were you able to concentrate while experiencing low blood sugar? Which paradigm did Brenda suggest? Client-centered, client-centric,
Client-based, client-focused,
client-centered,
client-based, client-focused, client-based, client-focused,
Not so easy, is it? Brenda suggested a client-based paradigm. You answered one out of two questions correctly. Not quite enough to save Charlie's eyes, but it's not all your fault. After 20 years, nearly all patients with type 1 diabetes have some damage to their retinas. After 20 years, nearly all patients with type 1 diabetes have some damage to their retinas.
some damage to their retinas. Google said floaters aren't a big deal, and most people don't even notice them. But that's all I can see. Like a giant billboard writing bad diabetic in the sky. I could have tested more often and corrected more vigorously. All those times I just didn't care enough to double check. will be what next? My kidneys, my heart. I'm sure I could have tighter control, but I always thought complications were way down the road.
We'll get you in quickly to see there's a surgeon so we can fix this before it actually affects your vision. If you can tighten your control and come in for regular checkups, there's no reason it won't be just
Just fine. Just fine. How can this be fine? How can this be fine? I'm not fine. I'm not fine. In what way am I fine? Fine is a cloudy day, but at least it didn't rain. Fine is not crying when you scrape your knee. Fine is having cataracts after a long full life, not going blind because you didn't obsess enough. Fine is how you respond to how do you do on the street when you don't want to talk. How can this be fine? How can this be fine? I'm not. How do you do, Charlie? I'm fine, Dan. Oh yes, Dan, just fine and dandy. So what if I'm not fine? You can't tell anyway. How can this be fine? How can this be fine? Still breathing. Shallowly, my sugars are so high. It burns with each deep breath. If I know what's coming anyway, when I just enjoy the hell out of life, instead of fighting off fate.
sounds like you have a choice to make.
But I've worked so hard to avoid complications. I've spent my whole life managing this. But what difference does it make?
So, what's it gonna be?
How can this be These are my eyes, as damaged as they may be. I choose how to use them. I do. I do.
Hello, my name is Michael Park. I am a composer and pianist, and I've been living with type 1 diabetes since 1991. So while we all celebrate 100 years of insulin this year, I'm also going to be celebrating 30 years of using insulin. I think it's only natural that diabetics are grateful for insulin. I've seen so many of my peers go into research, medical, and nonprofit sectors. Without a doubt, I would not be able to dedicate my life to music without insulin. But I struggled in the past to see how my work playing piano or writing music could give back to the diabetes community in a meaningful way. About a decade ago, some wonderful musicians helped me to transform a questionnaire about diabetes into a fun, interactive musical game. Fast forward a few more years, and because of insulin, I was able to write the world's first interactive opera about diabetes. Thank you to Banting and Best and everyone else along the way who's helped to bring insulin and keep it in our lives. I hope you'll join me and the ADA on World Diabetes Day and all through November as I stream my opera, Diagnosis Diabetes, online for free.
"100 years ago, in the cold, bleak winter, hopeful word came from a Banting and Best of health and progress for those with pancreas suppressed. 100 years ago, a faint and failing boy received his first shot. The brown muck revived, the insulin restored, his frailty soon forgot. 100 years since, boys and girls, young and old, live their birthdays, weddings, and lives in control. 100 years since that first day of insulin, lives preserved, lives with less incidents, yet 400 million today with lives still in dependence. 100-year birthday for that first day of insulin. Let's not wait 100 years more to find a cure, but let the joy of a free life become our blood's natural stimulant. 100 years from now, our lives better and stronger with insulin no longer our aid, newfound strength, newfound lives for millions and millions. Together, this is our crusade.
أهلين فيكم جميعا. أنا اسمي دانا نجيب من سوريا، واليوم رح أغني لكم غنية كتير حلوة وكتير عزيزة على قلبي اسمها أتحدى العالم للمغني صابر الرباعي. وإذا بتعرفوا هاي الغنية غنوا معي وإن شاء الله تتهنوا فيها. عمري وزماني والوقت فات وباقي ثواني. قربني ليك سيبني أعيش إحساسي بيك. بتحدى العالم كله وأنا وياك. بقول للدنيا بحالها إن أنا بهواك. وإنت حبيبي وقلبي وروحي معاك. قربني ليك سيبني أعيش إحساس هواك. بتحدى العالم كله وأنا وياك. بقول للدنيا بحالها إن أنا بهواك. وإنت حبيبي وقلبي وروحي معاك. قربني ليك سيبني أعيش إحساس هواك.
Hi, I'm Lisa Murdoch, Chief Advocacy Officer for the American Diabetes Association. Thank you for joining us today on World Diabetes Day. We hope you enjoyed our program showcasing this year's World Diabetes Day theme, Access to Diabetes Care. As you've heard, more than 537 million people around the world are living with diabetes, and many do not have access to diabetes care. You can visit worlddiabetesday.org to find helpful resources in multiple languages and learn more about the global diabetes community and how you can get involved. Here in the US, the American Diabetes Association is working hard to ensure people have access to adequate and affordable health care and promote health equity among at-risk populations affected by diabetes and prediabetes. We invite you to join us in our efforts by becoming a diabetes advocate. You can find out more at www.diabetes.org. November is American Diabetes Month, and we're taking the big step up against diabetes. Please stay tuned and watch our last video to learn how we are helping people take their health into their own hands through awareness, detection, management, and learning to thrive despite diabetes. Again, thank you for being part of World Diabetes Day with us.
It's time to move, face forward, head up, eyes on the destination. It's time to march, one foot in front of the other, onward, upward. It's time to push, fire off the line, never look back. It's time for all of us to take a step up and then another. Every inch is a success, even when it seems impossible to gain any ground. Every step is a victory, even when it's a struggle to start. And every one of us is capable of making a change, small or big, fast or slow, confident or just committed. They all add up, and they're the only way to get from here to where we know we need to be. Diabetes isn't going to beat itself. We can't win if we all don't step up, bigger than ever before. Are you ready? Set? Go.